Hey there, I'm Adeline. I know at 19 I may be young, but I understand how cruel the world can be. My family used to be super rich. As a result, I lived in a massive house, went to the best schools, and had some out of this world vacations. What I didn't realize was my dad was carrying around a big secret. His company had gone bankrupt. Being the proud man he was, instead of telling mom and me the truth, he let it beat him up. When I was 10, he committed suicide and left mom and me with a whole load of grief and guilt to deal with, and a house we could no longer afford. That's why we moved out of our palace to come and stay with my grandma in a small town. I always just presumed that after finishing high school, I'd go to college. My ambition was to study finance. Now, this seemed even more necessary as it meant that in the future, I could rebuild Dad's empire and make him proud. I didn't have an allowance anymore, so I was reliant on my part-time job in a restaurant to get me by. I'm pretty smart. Therefore, in my first few terms of college, I managed to get scholarships, which were my main financial source. Unfortunately, this term there was only one full scholarship available. The problem is that, as smart as I am, there's this other guy called Ryan on my course who's even smarter. In previous examinations, even though I crammed day and night and drank a whole load of coffee to stay alert, I was always one step behind him. It's so annoying as I knew he was a rich kid, so he didn't even need the scholarship. He was also good looking, and loads of girls swooned after him. You name it, he aced it. From coursework to girls. Jeez, he was the most frustrating person ever. I guess all my whining about Ryan was sending my roommate Bella crazy, as she told me to shut up and that I needed to use my assets to outplay Ryan. Thinking about it, her idea made sense. Ryan was always going to be smarter than me, so if I couldn't beat him, then I'd just have to distract him so he'd fail the test. I know this seemed mean, but it's not like he needed the scholarship, right? Bella let me borrow some of her cute clothes, showed me how to style my hair and how to do my makeup. I suddenly turned from Cinderella into a princess. Now, all I needed to do was approach Ryan and put my scholarship success plan into action. After class, Bella and I deliberately followed Ryan. As I walked past him, Bella jumped out and nudged me, causing me to tumble into him and drop my books. He immediately rushed to pick them all up and passed them to me. As I thanked him, I pretended to accidentally grab his hand. Our eyes met, and he smiled at me. Talk about success. The next day after school, I rushed to work. Some days ago, because I was so engrossed in studying, I forgot the work schedule. So when I got to the restaurant, my boss scolded me and she said that she would reduce part of my wage this month. I looked up at her with apologetic eyes. Then I suddenly felt like someone else was staring at me. I glanced at the order counter and saw Ryan. Talk about humiliating. Being on reduced wages was a disaster, so I had no choice but to find another part-time job to do alongside it. I needed to find something that I could fit around all my studying, so I needed it to have flexible time and shorter shifts. Light bulb moment. I could teach the piano. I had been playing it since I was little, and I knew I was good at it. I designed a flyer called Friendly Piano Tutor at Home, and to my delight, I received a call the next day. I turned up at the address, and to my surprise, found myself in front of a mansion. Did I find the right address? Flustered, I pulled out my phone and called the number they'd contacted me on. I was completely surprised when the person who opened the gate was Ryan. I blurted out loud, "Ryan? Is that you? You've hired me for piano lessons?" And stared at him. "Yeah," he smiled. "Look, I'm sorry for how your boss at the restaurant treated you. And, I have a piano here, so I guess now seems like the perfect time to learn." Since then, I taught Ryan piano. Turns out he was a natural. Typical. Was there anything this guy wasn't good at? Okay, so I found out that Ryan wasn't as much of a jerk as I thought he was. He was actually sweet and funny. We had a shared love of music concerts, and we both longed to own companies one day. One time, I took his hand to move his fingers over the keys when this weird feeling came over me. Was that sparks I felt? Then another time, when I praised him for acing his piece of music, he said, "It's down to my amazing and beautiful teacher." I blushed and quickly looked away from him. I guess he felt them too, as both of us began to blush and the situation went super awkward. It's safe to say, the bond between us grew stronger, but I had to keep things professional as I had the scholarship to think about. So at the end of a piano lesson, when he asked me out, I quickly refused. I told him I had to study. He asked why I had to study so much when I was already doing so well. Seizing the opportunity, I told him how if I didn't get the scholarship for the next term, then I'd have no choice but to quit college, as I couldn't afford it. Hearing that, Ryan told me not to worry about it, as he would deliberately make his work worse, so as long as I did my best, then the scholarship would be mine. I felt embarrassed and a bit awkward, but I hugged him and thanked him. But something happened the day before the exam that changed my mind. We had a piano lesson that day, so as I was walking toward the room where the lessons took place, I heard voices coming from his father's study. Then I heard a loud voice say, "It's about time you took a look at Vincent and strived more to be like him. I don't want to live with the embarrassment of having a disappointment for a son." It was clear from all the mistakes he made during the lesson that Ryan had something on his mind. Was it because of the conversation with his father? In the end, I timidly asked him, "Ryan, who is Vincent? I'm sorry, I only ask because I overheard your conversation between you and your dad, and I can see you're distracted." He told me that Vincent's his older half-brother, and the son his father had with his first wife. Vincent was extremely smart and was helping their father to manage a foreign branch. Ryan always felt insignificant in comparison to him, and knew how much his father wanted him to be as excellent as his half-brother was, so he could later help him manage the company. Ryan told me, however, since they were kids, he'd never got on with Vincent, so he didn't want to be inferior to his older brother. So even though he didn't need a scholarship, he always tried to be the best. That night, I thought a lot about everything, and realized that not only did I feel bad for Ryan, but I also had strong feelings for him. I confided in Bella and told her that I wanted to confess all to him. I wanted him to take the scholarship test with his real ability. He deserved the highest position and to make his father proud of him. Besides, did I really want to win by default? Doing that wouldn't have been honorable. When Bella and I were talking, our moody housemate Dee Dee shouted down to us, "Will you guys shut up and let me sleep?" The next morning, I went to school early and waited for Ryan at the college gates. Seeing him, I waved happily, but he ignored me and walked off. I shouted after him, "Ryan, you have to do your best today with all of your ability." That's when he stopped walking and turned to look at me with cold eyes and said, "Of course I will. Dee Dee messaged me last night and told me all about your attempted sabotage plot." Stunned, I lost the ability to talk and instead looked at him with pleading eyes as I stuttered out, So, I know you want to find out what happened next. Stay tuned as the next part of my story is coming soon. Hi, it's me again, Adeline, the devoted college student and part-time piano teacher. Do you remember me? As promised in the previous section, I came back to tell you more about my story. So, here's a quick recap. The only way I can afford to stay at college was by securing the one scholarship space available. The problem was that the smart guy Ryan was standing in my way. So, I used my charms to convince him he should mess up his exam, so I got the spot. Yeah, I know, this was lame of me. But then I realized I was falling for him. So I saw sense and was about to tell him to try his best in the exam. Only my mean roommate Dee Dee got to him first and told him everything. I had to sit through my exam knowing Ryan hated me. As soon as I finished, I packed my stuff to go home, as I was sure I wouldn't win the scholarship now. Besides, I didn't want to be around Dee Dee or have to worry about bumping into Ryan. As I dragged my suitcase across the schoolyard, I found myself filled with feelings of regret, sadness, and I missed Ryan. Suddenly, I felt a hug from behind, a familiar scent, and warm voice whispered in my ear, "I'm sorry I misunderstood you." I burst into tears. I turned back and squeezed him. It turned out that right after the exam, my amazing housemate Bella had found Ryan and explained it all to him. I feel so lucky to have such a lovely friend like her. I invited Ryan to come and visit my hometown. My mother was happy to see me bringing a boy home, and even though I told her we were just friends, I knew she didn't believe me, as the sparks between us were so obvious. She seemed very pleased and even whispered in my ear, "Good choice, Addie." That night, Mom cooked steak and dauphinoise potatoes as a treat for Ryan and me. We chatted happily, and Mom took a genuine interest in Ryan and his family. She asked him the usual questions, such as, "What is your major? Where do you live? What do your parents do?" But then, when Ryan said his father's name, Mom dropped her fork. She asked some more details, then the color drained from her face. I asked her if she was okay, and she made an excuse that she was a bit tired, so she told us to carry on eating and went to her room. That night, after I had made the bed up in the spare room for Ryan, I went to my mother's room to ask if she was feeling better. I saw her sitting there, staring out of the window and crying. I called, "Mom, what's wrong with you?" She looked straight at me, then slowly said, "I'm so sorry, but you can't be with Ryan." This didn't make any sense to me, as earlier she told me how much she liked him, so I asked her, "Why is that, Mom? You were all for him before." Then she gripped my hand as she told me the shocking truth. Ryan's father was the man who made my father's company bankrupt and resulted in him taking his own life. It's impossible. It can't be like that. Watching the tears rolling down my mother's cheeks, I understood that even though it was heartbreaking, it was true. Ryan wasn't just the cute boy I had a crush on. He's also my family's enemy's son. That night I couldn't sleep. How could things be so coincidental? Our love was just sprouting, and now it was in a situation that was no different from Romeo and Juliet's. I knew it wasn't Ryan's fault that his dad was a heartless businessman, but at the same time, how could I continue to see a boy who I knew was the son of the man who caused my dad to end his life? Also, there was no way his parents would ever accept me if they knew my true identity. I didn't know how to tell Ryan the truth. I mean, it's not like I could just come out and tell him straight that his dad was basically a murderer. No, I didn't want to hurt Ryan like that. The next morning, Ryan left in a rush as his dad called him saying there was some kind of emergency. He kissed me goodbye, and I felt my heart ache. Not only was it our first kiss, but I knew it also had to be our last. He said he'd see me at college, and I mumbled out a, "Yeah, sure." I didn't have enough money for college. Well, there was no way I could afford going back. I sulked around the house feeling miserable. Then, to my surprise, the college called me and told me I had got the scholarship. This was such a shock for me, and as fortunate as I felt, I also felt sad. This meant I wouldn't be able to avoid Ryan. Instead, I'd have to face the boy I liked every day, knowing I would be betraying my father's memory if I stayed with him. Ryan said he'd pick me up from the airport. I was so nervous. In fact, the fear that I wouldn't be able to suppress my emotions when I met him filled me. As I waited for him, suddenly my phone popped up a line. "Darling, I'm sorry. I can't come and pick you up. Things are very urgent right now, and I need to stay here and help my dad solve the company's problems. I will try to come home as soon as possible. I miss you and look forward to seeing you." I felt so down, but it was good. I wouldn't have to feel so awkward about seeing him anymore. When I was waiting at the bus stop, I met this guy called Junsu. Turns out he had just arrived from Korea and was studying at the same college as me. He looked very awkward, just like when I first came here. I offered to lead the way back to college because I was heading there too. 2 weeks later, and Ryan still hadn't returned to college, and I didn't receive any messages from him. Although this saddened me, I tried to convince myself that it was for the best. I returned to my part-time restaurant job. My boss told me there was a new guy starting, so it was my job to show him what to do. She then introduced me to Junsu. Turns out he was the new staff member. Everyone in the restaurant kept teasing me that Junsu liked me. Even Bella said so. I didn't know if it was real or not because I had always focused on studying and working. Either way, it didn't matter, as my heart still pined for Ryan. Then one day, after school, while I was thinking randomly, my footsteps led me to Ryan's house. 3 scary-looking people were standing outside the mansion, and there was a for sale sign on the gate. What's happening? I started to worry. Why hadn't Ryan messaged me? Where was he right now? I stood there for a moment and then I took out my phone and scrolled to his name, but I couldn't bring myself to call him. When I was in trouble, Ryan was always there, helping and loving me, but now I couldn't do anything to help him. The realization hit me just how much I loved and missed him. I ended up walking to the city park and slumped down on the lawn near the lake where Ryan and I used to study together. I started crying. That's when Junsu appeared. Turned out he came here often to go for a picnic. He came sitting next to me and passed me a glass of soju and some tasty dried meats. This drink is incredible. If it can't cheer you up, then nothing can. He smiled at me. He was such a sweet guy, and I appreciated his kindness. I was still crying as I drank the soju. Then I ended up spilling all my feelings out to Junsu. He was such a good listener, and he didn't seem to mind that I was crying into his shirt. Then suddenly I looked up and saw a familiar shape standing over me. It was Ryan. At first I had to pinch myself. Had the wine gone to my head and caused me to imagine him? I let go of Junsu and jumped up to rub my eyes to see clearly. It really was Ryan. He was standing there, looking surprised and extremely angry. Then he turned away and I chased after him, but because I was a bit drunk, I fell to the ground. I tried shouting out to him that it wasn't what it looked like, but he chose to ignore me. I had no choice but to lay there on the ground and watch the boy I loved with all my heart walking away from me. Right now, it all seems so complicated. Stay tuned for the final part in my saga. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Hey guys, Adeline here, again. I'm going to tell you how my story ends. Here's a quick refresher for you. I love Ryan, but let's just say it's complicated. I found out that his father played a part in my father's bankruptcy, which led to his suicide. I couldn't talk this through with Ryan as he went off the radar, only to reappear when I was hugging my friend Junsu in the park, which I was only doing because I was upset about him. Anyway, Ryan got the wrong idea and stormed off. The following morning, I woke up with the worst headache ever and felt dreadful. I tried messaging and calling Ryan, but he didn't answer or reply, and he seemed to have disappeared off all social media. I went to his old house and asked his neighbors, but none of them knew where his family were. I also asked his close friend, and he told me that all he knew was that Ryan had transferred to another college in Canada. 2 years passed, and I didn't hear anything from Ryan, yet he was never far from my thoughts. I hung out with Junsu more often. I found him great fun to be around, but there was one downside. I knew he was in love with me. On 3 different occasions, he told me so, and on each occasion, I felt super awkward turning him down. I believed Junsu was a good person, but then something happened to ruin our friendship forever. One night, Junsu and I went to a bar in town. We both got a little drunk, and he kept on slurring out how much he loved me. I didn't want to hurt his feelings, so I politely told him I cared about him, but just as a friend. Junsu insisted on walking me home. When we got back, I felt tired and just wanted to go inside and sleep. So I thanked him and was about to go inside when he grabbed my arm and pulled me back. I told him to let go, but he shouted at me, "Why not me? You know that I really love you. What did he have that I didn't?" Then he leaned to kiss me. I pushed him off me, but then he didn't seem to get the hint. Instead, he pushed me into the wall and tried to unbutton my shirt. I shouted, "No, I don't love you and I never will." Then I shoved him off me. I ran inside and quickly locked the door. That night, Junsu was standing outside the dormitory, waiting until early morning to see me, but I was determined not to see him. Since then, Junsu tried apologizing to me, but I just didn't feel safe around him anymore. We still worked together, so I was polite to him, but we no longer hung out with each other. Then one evening I went to my shift at work, and my boss told me Junsu had left. I never saw him again after that. After the incidents with Ryan and Junsu, I just couldn't deal with any more drama. I put all my focus into my studies. My hard work paid off as I finished 4 years of college with a first-class bachelor's degree and received a job offer to be an assistant director in a reputable steel manufacturing company. I devoted myself entirely to working. After half of a year, my position was strengthened and my boss trusted in me. As a result, in most of his important appointments, he always let me accompany him. Our company was planning to build another manufacturing factory, and we were trying to find a construction contractor, so I went with my boss to meet potential contractors at a luxury restaurant. I almost fainted when the bosses of the company came in. It was Ryan and his father. Ryan was so surprised that he was speechless. Seeing that, my boss asked, are you acquaintances? Ryan's father didn't seem to recognize me because it had been a few years, and I'd never had much interaction with him. Before I could react, Ryan said, "No, I don't know her." Although his comment hurt, I was professional, so I quickly regained my composure and we greeted each other like we were meeting for the first time. He'd changed so much. Now he was quite the dashing businessman. I wondered if he had a model-like girlfriend to go with his shiny new life. I found it hard to act naturally around him. I kept stuttering out my words, and my palms were sweaty. Worse still, he seemed completely unfazed. At our dinner, we discussed our job. While Ryan's dad seemed to be desperate to collaborate, my boss didn't show much interest in them. I knew this was because we also had another contractor offering a lower bid. Before we left, I went to the restroom, and before opening the door, I heard voices coming out from the hallway. It was Ryan and his father talking to each other. "If we don't get this contract, we're finished." "I know, Dad. I try my best to win this contract," Ryan firmly said. Okay, so perhaps his life wasn't so perfect after all. At that moment, the thought of helping them popped into my head. But then I thought again. Ryan's dad had ruined my father's company to the point of bankruptcy. Thanks to him, I no longer had my dad here. So if their company was in trouble now, it was just retribution, right? That night, I struggled a lot to process all this in my mind. Finally, I decided to leave that feud behind and find a way to help them. I hated what Ryan's father did to my family, but I wasn't like him. I was a good person, and I knew Ryan was too. I loved him and wanted to help him. I stayed awake for several nights and collected all the data to help prove Ryan's company's potentiality. I also gathered evidence of how on a previous job, the other contractor reduced their raw materials, and this led to a decrease in the quality of the construction of their project. I completed the entire set of documents right before the day my boss planned to make an appointment with the other contractor. Fortunately, after listening to my presentation, my boss changed his mind and decided to choose Ryan's company to carry out the project. On the day our company signed the contract, Ryan was still cold toward me. He would never know that I helped bring this contract to his company. But no problem. I just needed closure so that I could finally put all the hurt behind me and move forward with my life. One day, when I came home from work because I was too lazy to drive, I took the bus, which Ryan and I used to take together. As soon as I stepped onto it, I gasped. In the last row, where we always used to sit together, Ryan was there, napping with his earphones in. I plucked up the courage to sit next to him. He woke up and looked at me. Needless to say, he seemed surprised. It was about time I told him everything. So I asked him to go for a walk in the park with me. He gave a nod of his head, and we walked there in silence. I told Ryan the truth, from how I found out that his father's ruthless business deals bankrupted my father and resulted in him taking his own life. Then I told him about Junsu, and how the time he spotted us together, he'd just been comforting me as I was so upset on seeing that his house was for sale. After hearing everything, Ryan hugged me. We stayed like that, hugging and crying for a long time. Neither of us wanted to let the other go. It turned out that in the last 2 years, Ryan's family company had gone through a hard time and was on the verge of bankruptcy. So his father had to sell his house, and then their family moved to Canada to save the company at the last branch, which his brother managed. They planned to settle there too, but Ryan still wanted to go back to the US because he still loved me. The day he came back, he saw me with Junsu and presumed I'd never loved him if I could move on so easily. Angry, he'd blocked me out of his life and moved straight to Canada. He finished college there and helped manage the company with his father and brother. Recently, his company met another difficult patch, which they would now get through thanks to the contract. "Getting the contract feels like a miracle," he said. "But the biggest miracle of all is reuniting with you." After that, we decided that we would not let the past story of our parents affect our happiness. We loved each other, and our families would just have to find a way to accept it. With Ryan's support, I found the courage to go to his house for dinner and meet his father. After talking for a while, I mentioned my father's name, which left Ryan's dad looking surprised. It turned out that my father's death wasn't down to him. Instead, there was a third person who interfered in the business between them, and he was the one who caused my father to die of hopelessness. I cried out in relief. For so long, I'd thought the man I love had a monster for a father. Finding out that this wasn't the case was so overwhelming. Ryan's father promised to make it up to me, and he offered me an amazing job in his company. Although flattered, my current job was going very well, and maybe in my position I could help them more in the upcoming project. As for Ryan and I, now there are no more barriers separating our love. We can finally be together, and there's no way I'm ever losing him again. I'm also doing so well in my career that I'm able to send my mom money to help with the bills. One day, I fully intend to rebuild my father's business empire, but for now, I hope he's looking down on me and feeling proud of all I've achieved. The road to true love isn't always easy, but it all worked out for me and Ryan in the end. It goes to show that sometimes you should never give up on love, and you should never presume something is as bad as it first seems, as this isn't always the case. Trust me, I can vouch for that. Oh no! I'd just covered my childhood friend Kevin in coffee, but I'm currently Liana, so he didn't recognize me, as he only knew me as Kai. Confused? Then you should check out parts 1 and 2 first. I frantically apologized to Kevin while looking around for some napkins to soak the coffee up. It's fine, he smiled. I smiled back at him. Yep, he was the same kind, sweet Kevin. Suddenly I heard Diamond's voice. Liana! What have you done? Then she appeared next to Kevin and gently touched his arm. I apologize. She's new. It's okay. It was my fault anyway. I wasn't looking where I was going. That's just typical of you, always taking the blame. She gave him this starry-eyed look. Oh, so you two already know each other? I thought out loud. Yes, Kevin and I went to college together in Oz. I introduced him to Father for this project, as I believe he'll be an asset to it. Now, run along and make some fresh coffees. Diamond gave me a stare. As I went off to make coffees, again, I wondered about Diamond. Did she like Kevin? Oh, no. That manipulative girl doesn't deserve such a sweet guy like him. Later that day, we had a meeting where my dad introduced Kevin as the leader of the project. Kevin then thanked him and started talking about his visions for this project. And it was so obvious how all the girls in the room couldn't take their eyes off him, including Diamond. Ugh. The next day after work, I followed Kevin out to the parking lot and shouted his name. When he turned and saw me, he smiled, and I instantly felt warm inside. I have something for you, as an apology for ruining your last one. I passed him a new shirt. I hope I guessed your size right. Thanks, you really didn't have to do this. He looked flattered as he took it from me. Yep, you have the size spot on. Impressive. His comment caused me to smile to myself. Living as a boy for years at least gave me a perk of understanding their sizes. I waved him goodbye and started to walk off, but he shouted, Wait, is there any chance I could have your number? You bet. I was blushing so hard by then. And after that, we started messaging each other, and every time my phone buzzed with his name, I found myself doing this gummy smile. Unfortunately, I couldn't stay in my love bubble with Kevin forever. Instead, I had to spend my days being bossed around by Diamond. Ugh. Once, she was ordering me to revise a report I'd already redone twice. Suddenly, Kevin walked over, picked up the report, and said, Oh, this one. You've done a good job with it, Liana. No need to change anything. Diamond looked furious at being undermined, and I couldn't hide my smug look. Take that, little Miss Bossy. After she left, I thanked him for helping me out. It's fine. Hey, don't take much notice of Diamond. She's just intent on impressing her father. If she causes you any more problems, just come find me, okay? Oh, what a sweet guy he was. But one afternoon, I walked into the office kitchen to make myself a drink and saw Diamond and Kevin having a serious chat. On seeing me, Diamond said to him, I'm sorry, Kevin. You needed to know the truth. Then she gave me a snooty look as she passed me. I wonder what that was about. I was going to ask him, but before I could, he just left without so much as a glance in my direction. Okay, that was weird, but maybe he was just busy, right? That evening, I messaged Kevin and asked him if he wanted to go for a jog in the park. He agreed, but when he showed up, he could barely meet my eye. Kevin, what's wrong? He was silent for a moment, then shouted, "Why? Why did you lie to me? Diamond told me how you're engaged to Kai. Why did you lead me on?" I, um, I, I sputtered out, but he just tutted, then walked off. I stood there speechless and wondering how I was going to get out of this mess. If this wasn't bad enough, as I was on my way home, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Diamond. "Leave the house and the company by tomorrow, else I'm telling Kai the truth." Ugh, of course, I just ghosted her dumb message, and true to her word, the next day, my Kai phone went off. It was Diamond telling me how Liana was cheating on me. It was crystal clear she wasn't going to drop this. Some days later, my father asked me to go to dinner with him, so he could get to know me better before I married his son. I thought this was sweet of him, so I agreed. Besides, this was a great opportunity to test the water, figuring out if he's ready for the truth yet. We had some small talk over the appetizer. Then suddenly, Dad put down his fork and asked me, "How is Kai? It's such a shame to admit, but we've grown distant over the years, and it was all my fault. I know I haven't always been the best father." He trailed off. "Kai's good," I replied. I guess it was now or never to say what I wanted to. Actually, he's really happy in Canada. And, well, he has these big dreams of becoming an architect." "Oh, I didn't know that." He lowered his head. "I just thought he'd want to inherit the company one day." "His heart isn't in it. He's so afraid of telling you as he doesn't want to disappoint you." He was silent, and I worried he was going to yell at me, only he didn't. Instead, gave a thoughtful sigh, then replied, "Very well. I respect Kai's decision, and I will support him on whichever path he chooses." This was totally unexpected from him. I was so overwhelmed, I left my seat to hug him, and I told him I'd pass the words to Kai. Now I finally knew how much Dad loved Kai, which means he loved me too, right? I just needed to find a good time to tell him the truth. The next day, on my way home from work, I received a frantic phone call from Mom. Turns out Diamond had told everyone in the family that I'd cheated on Kai. As I was trying to figure out what to do next, Dad messaged my Liana phone and demanded I come home at once. On the way home, I thought about what I was going to say to him. Geez, this was terrifying. If it went wrong, Mom and I could end up disowned. I knocked on his study, and in a serious tone, he said, "Come in." Then on seeing me, he continued, "Liana, Diamond seems adamant you are liaising with Kevin behind my son's back. Please explain yourself." I took a deep breath, then blurted out, "The thing is, I'm not cheating on Kai because, well, I am Kai." Then in Kai's voice, I continued, while slowly took off my wig. "I was never actually a boy. Instead, I'm a girl, but Mom didn't want me losing out to Diamond, so she made me pretend to be a boy." He was so shocked. He leaned back in his chair and almost tumbled backward. I explained to him why Mom and I did what we did. It was such a relief, finally having that weight off my shoulders. I knew Dad needed some time to digest this avalanche of information, so I put my wig back on and went to find Mom. She was pacing her bedroom in anxiety. "I've told you to be extra careful around Diamond. Now how are we possibly meant to carry out this plan?" "Don't worry, Mom. I'd found a way to resolve this mess." I comforted her, but didn't let her know that I'd told Dad the truth yet, as that would just make her even more anxious. The next few days, Dad still acted normal, as if nothing had happened, and when I walked into the dining room for dinner, I saw Diamond's face drop. She clearly thought Dad would have chucked me out by now. She slammed her fist on the table and yelled at Dad, "Why's she still here?" Ignoring her, he asked Grandpa to pass him the gravy. This only angered Diamond further, and she pointed at me and screamed, "She cheated on Kai! Kick her out of this house!" I put down my cutlery, calmly stood up, and in a confident voice I said, "In fact, I am Kai." It was worth doing just for everyone's reaction. My mom turned white. Diamond was dumbfounded while my grandparents clung onto the table in shock. After I'd explained it all to them in more detail, Diamond was the first to respond. "So you and your mother lied to everyone? This is unacceptable. Get out of this house." Poor Mom looked so ashamed. She couldn't meet Dad's eye as she mumbled out, "Don't blame Liana. She was just a child. It's my fault." Then she pulled my arm and whispered to me that we should leave. Diamond sneered. Those liars. You deserve that. Will you please be quiet? Else I advise you to just leave. Dad gave Diamond a stern look. This shocked her, and she sat back down in silence. I've made a lot of mistakes over the years, and because of them I have many regrets. I was selfish and unkind. He looked at Mom. It pains me to know that you felt as though I left you with no choice but to lie to me. I love you, but I know how I treated you was cruel. I was so desperate for a child that I sought comfort in someone else. I know I wasn't there for you and Kai, Liana, when you needed me. Now, if you'll let me, I want to make amends. Diamond jumped up to her feet so fast that the whole table wobbled. She screamed out, "This is nonsense!" and stormed off. So, that sure was eventful. But finally, everyone knew the truth, which meant Mom and I didn't have to lie anymore. And best of all, I never had to pretend to be Kai ever again. The following week, I was roaming around the house when I saw Diamond in her room, packing. I stepped in, and she said, "I'll be out of your sight in a blink. Don't worry. I'm leaving for Miami." I knelt next to her. "I don't want you to go. After all, we're sisters." She gave me this wide-eyed look. But I was horrible to you. You must have been through so much being forced to live as a boy." "Yeah, it was hard at times, but it's okay. I can be me now." I smiled. "I know I was mean. I'm sorry. I guess I've always felt like an outsider. I know my mom wants me to claim what's rightfully mine, and I felt so pressured because I'm no match for Kai." "Don't worry about it. We've all done things we regret. Besides, Kai's gone, so you can just be you. You're a great businesswoman, although you might need to tone down a notch on the bossiness." I chuckled. "Come on, sis. Let's get you unpacked." When we'd finished, I hugged her and said, "Oh, as for Kevin, I think we should fairly compete for his heart." She blushed. "Oh, no, it's fine. I used to like him, but he just sees me as a friend. Besides, everyone in the company knows it's you he likes." I felt good that we'd sorted things out. Now I just need to fix things with Kevin, and I had the perfect idea. I messaged him telling me to meet me by the woods, close to his old school. Then I went and waited by the tree we once built a den in. He walked over to me, a confused look on his face. "Liana, how did you know about this spot?" He sat down next to me and I said, "I used to come here with my best friend when I was a kid. He was such a sweet boy. He never judged me or questioned me. It always pained me that I didn't get to say goodbye to him." I could see Kevin's mind ticking away. That's when I took off my wig, wiped away my makeup, and passed him half of a candy bar and said, "It's been a long time coming, but I owe you this." He stared at me, open mouth. So, you're Kai and Liana?" I said, "Yeah, it's me. I'm both." "That's why I always felt familiar towards you. This is unbelievable," he continued. "Wow." He stared at me through teary eyes. "Just wow. I mean, this is crazy. I was so upset when you left, and now here you are." When he got over the initial shock, I told him about my life and why I pretended to be a boy. Afterward, he hugged me tightly and said, "I'm not losing you again, Liana. I love you." I'm so excited, as it's my graduation ceremony tomorrow. Eek! And today, I'm on my way to the airport to pick my mom up. I can't wait to see her, but, well, it's complicated. I grew up in Philly, but I've been studying here in Toronto for the last 3 years. I'm so grateful to God for letting me be a girl, 'cause, girls' lives are way more colorful than boys' lives are. Clothes, makeup, shoes, you name it. For girls, it's just so much more fun. I understand I'm probably confusing you. Well, up until the age of 18, I lived life as a boy. Kai. Actually, Kai's my legal name. I grew up with toy trucks, dinosaur wallpaper, and a rocket-shaped playhouse. Then, at 2 years old, Mom moved into a villa out in the countryside. It was just us and our old maid Rita. Meanwhile, my father and grandparents stayed in the city and ran the family company together. Back then, all I knew was my family was rich and successful, but I didn't think much about it. Hey, I was just a kid. All I cared about was getting to choose what color tumbler I had my juice in. Mom always said we moved away because of her migraines, which worsened in hectic surroundings. Nonsense. She just wanted to keep me away from the family so they wouldn't figure out I was actually a girl. Crazy, huh? So I must have known I was a girl, right? The thing is, when you're little, you pretty much believe everything your mom tells you. So when she said I was a boy, then I had no reason to think otherwise. Still, I was drawn to girly things like a magpie was to anything shiny. For instance, I tried putting my mom's sparkly hair clips in my short hair, but Mom caught me, took them out, and told me they weren't for boys. Another time, when I was at a playdate at this boy's house, I peered into his sister's room and saw all of the Barbies and dolls. Mesmerized, I took one and started playing with it, but then I heard him laughing at me, and he teased me that I was a boy and I shouldn't like gross things like dollies. I didn't like being teased, so after that, I tried to keep my liking for girly stuff to myself. I pretended to like action figures, aliens, and cars, but to be honest, I didn't care much for them at all. But the older I got, the harder it was for my mom to keep up the lie. The trickiest part being the school restrooms. To hide the secret, Mom told me the bathrooms at school were dirty, and if I used them, I'd end up with scaly green skin. So every day on the break, Rita would come and take me home to go to the toilet. At first, people at school thought this was weird, but then I guess they just put it down to odd things that rich people do. The other boys annoyed me. I didn't want to play football or run around the playground pretending to be a gladiator. Instead, I wanted to hula hoop with the girls and plait the manes of their toy ponies. So I did just that. One time, when I was waiting to get picked up from school, me and my friend were flicking through her girly magazine. Then suddenly, Mom stormed up to me and dragged me out of the girl zone. Then on the ride home, in a serious voice, she said, "Kai, boys have to play with boys. It's just the way it is." This sucked, as I didn't want to play with the boys, but I didn't want to upset my mom, so I stopped playing with the girls. From then onward, I mostly just sat by myself and read fairy tales about princesses and mermaids, which I disguised in the covers of boys' books. My mom must have realized how I felt, so she didn't want to risk me being around other girls, which is why at 11, she insisted I went to an all-boys school. That sucked, as I had never really gotten along with other boys, if not to say that I hated them. But then, during lunch on my first day at the new school, this boy called Kevin sat down next to me and passed me half of his candy bar. We became best friends after that, and even built a den together in the nearby woods. Hanging out with him were my happiest days, as in those moments I just felt free. Then one day during a biology class, the teacher passed us sheets with diagrams of boys' bodies. My body didn't look like that. Was there something wrong with me? Confused, I decided to confide in Kevin about this. He was also a boy, so he could help me, right? I held up the sheet and whispered to him, my body is different to this. Before Kevin even had a chance to answer, one of the other boys shouted out, "Kai's different from us, let's go check it out." Then, to my horror, some of them lifted me and started carrying me toward the bathroom. I was screaming at the top of my voice. Luckily, the teacher ran out into the hallway after me and demanded the boys put me down at once. My mom rushed to school ASAP to take me home, as she received a call from my teacher about the incident. She tried cheering me up with ice cream, but it didn't work. I was so upset and confused. "Mom, why am I different from other boys?" She gave a wounded look, sighed, then in a quiet voice said, "Before I tell you the truth, I need you to understand that I love you, Kai, and everything I do is to protect you." She hugged me close to her, then continued, "I was so desperate for a child, but after years of trying, it felt like it wasn't meant to be. Then I found out that your dad cheated on me with another woman, and she was pregnant with a boy." I stared at Mom with wide eyes, patiently waiting to hear what came next, because so far, nothing made sense. This was hard to bear, but just when I thought my heart would break, well, I fell pregnant with you. You have to understand your father and grandparents have very old-fashioned mindsets on the company and having a male heir to inherit it. So, even though his mistress ended up having a baby girl, and your father agreed to fund them both only if they moved to Miami, I knew you'd never be respected in your father's eyes, not as a girl. That mistress of his would make sure their daughter came back and got everything over you. I just couldn't let that happen. So I lied to everyone that you were a boy. I know you're probably angry with me, and I don't blame you. But you can't tell your father the truth. You can't tell anyone the truth. Wow. So I was a girl? Now everything started to fall into place. This explained a lot. But of course I was furious. I'd been forced to live a lie just to please my mom. It took a few days before I began to calm down and be more understanding. I guess things must have been really hard for her too. Also, I was kind of relieved I was actually a girl, as deep down I'd always felt a desire to wear pretty dresses and play with dolls. I told Mom this and said I loved being a girl, so she made a compromise with me. I'd continue living as Kai until I was 18, and then I would go and study abroad, as the girl I'd always dreamed of being. After that, I moved schools to keep up the secret. It sucked that I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to Kevin, but I was relieved to go to a co-ed school again. Mom said I could hang out with the other girls as long as I kept the secret. Then, when I started high school, things became more complicated. Firstly, my voice was naturally soft, so I had to put on this gruff voice, which would leave me with a sore throat by the end of the day. So I just became one of those kids who didn't say much. I had to spend ages each morning wrapping a bandage around my chest to flatten it, and then I hid beneath baggy t-shirts and sweaters. I also had to do this boy walk. Then there was the bathroom. I swear everyone thought I had bladder problems, as I was the kid who always asked to go to the bathroom mid-class to avoid the other boys. At least there's one good thing out of this was that I didn't have to deal with sweaty PE, as Mom had told the principal that I had a health problem, so I could stay out of these risky activities, especially swimming lessons. But the struggles would never stop. I often looked at the girls with their glossy lips and in their cute vest tops with envy. Oh, how I longed to be able to be who I wanted to be. Finally, high school finished, and true to her word, Mom sent me off to a college in Canada. She sorted all of the paperwork out for me. There, I changed my name to Leanna, and I started my new, exciting life as a girl. I love long, shiny mermaid hair, so I started wearing a wig. I watched so many YouTube videos on how to apply makeup, painted my nails, wore pretty outfits, and tried walking in heels. Okay, all of these things would take some practice, but it still felt amazing. I was finally free of my old fake life, and I could just be me. But I knew my family couldn't find out the truth, as it could have catastrophic effects for me and my mom. So I still had to dress and act like Kai again whenever I FaceTimed Dad or my grandparents. Ugh. Time sure flies when you're having fun, doesn't it? I couldn't believe I was graduating tomorrow, and I was so grateful that Mom would be here to see it. When I picked her up from the airport, we both hugged and cried, then hugged some more. Through sobs, she blurted out, "Look at you! You look so different." Thanks, Mom. I smiled and wiped her tears away. Luckily, Dad's workaholic, so he didn't even ask to come. Phew, as that would have been an awkward situation. As I wheeled Mom's suitcase out of the airport, she said to me, "We just need to take some photos of you graduating as Kai to show the rest of the family." I didn't want to be Kai on my special day, but I knew it was something that had to be done. So I forced a smile and said, "Sure, Mom, but let's do it where no one else can see us. I don't want my friends thinking I've gone crazy." The graduation ceremony was awesome. It felt so good to be up on that stage collecting my degree as my true self, glossy hair and all. Afterward, I took Mom to my favorite restaurant to continue the celebrations. As I twirled a piece of pasta around my fork, I said to her, "It feels so good to live life as a girl." I was thinking, I want to go back to Philadelphia and tell everyone the truth about who I am. My mom's face dropped, and then she said something totally unexpected. "You might think it's impossible to be two people at once. Yeah, I'm Liana, but I'm also Kai. Confused? Then I suggest you check out part 1 of my story. In short, my mom fooled everyone, including me, into thinking I'm a boy when actually I'm a girl, so my traditional-minded family wouldn't be lured into giving away my inheritance. Back in the restaurant, and I'd just shown my mom how I wanted to go back to Philly and tell my family the truth. No, she shook her head. You can't. It's not the right time. But Mom, why? I don't want to lie anymore. Stay here, and I'll tell your father you're doing a master's degree. Again with the lies. I'm sick of them. I just want to be me. I let out a frustrated sigh. I know you do, but I don't want you losing out on your future. I gave her a quizzing look. Come on, Mom, it wouldn't be that bad. Honey, Diamond is back, and she's adamant to worm her way into the company. Oh no. This changed things. You see, Diamond's my sassy, ambitious half-sister. My father had her with his mistress. Now Diamond was back from her studies in Australia and eager to claim what she believed was hers. Ugh. Mom continued. She's always snooping around the house, and her attitude is awful. It's only a matter of time before she refuses to leave. That's why I told you this was not an appropriate time to come out with the truth. Diamond would take advantage of it and turn everything into a bigger mess. Well, that was that. I had no choice but to stay in Canada. Ugh. On the plus side, at least I could be Liana here. Then one night, I just returned home from a party in my bodycon dress and heavy makeup when my phone buzzed. It was a video call from Mom. Hi, Mom. I popped myself down on my bed. Oh, that Diamond is a piece of work. She used my Ralph Lauren trinket dish as an ashtray. Can you believe that? Oh, that's awful. Have you spoken to Dad about it? Right at that moment, I saw my father appear behind Mom, and he asked her if she was talking to Kai. Startled, I immediately took off my wig, wiped my lips onto the back of my hand, pulled off my eyelashes, and wrapped a blanket around me so he couldn't see my dress. I reappeared on screen with a forced smile and lowered my voice to say, Hi, Dad. He coldly asked, Why is your face so dirty? Nothing. Your mother and I are to attend an important corporate event this weekend, and I want you to come with us. It will be a good experience for you. Be home by Saturday. When my father demands something, well, then there's absolutely zero point in questioning him about it, so it looks like Kai was going back to Philadelphia. That weekend, I packed my bags and transformed myself back into Kai. Jeez, I'd forgotten how much it sucked having to wear these unflattering clothes. Mom was there to pick me up at the airport. She rushed over to me and gushed, Look at you. My daughter is so handsome. I have to admit that I was really nervous on the way home. By the time the grand house came into view, I felt like I was going to barf. I hadn't been Kai properly in years. What if I messed up, and then Dad disowned both me and Mom? Mom must have sensed how I was feeling, as she took my hand and led me inside. My father was sitting on the edge of the couch with a black coffee and a ton of paperwork in front of him. Hi, Dad. Mom elbowed me, so I coughed to clear my throat, then in a male voice said, Hi, Dad. Your son is back. Yes. Hello, Dad replied, his attention still on his paperwork. Phew. It seemed that he hadn't noticed my voice mishap. After that, I went up to my room, freshened up and changed into my suit. I sprayed myself with cologne, as smelling like a guy might make me act more like one, right? Later on, my father drove us to the event. He wouldn't stop going on about people he wanted to impress and contracts he was after. So without thinking, I grabbed my mom's purse and pulled out her compact mirror and lipstick. I pouted my lips and was about to put it on when I saw my dad glaring at me in the rearview mirror. It's just lip balm. The flight really dried them out. I licked my lips as I quickly dropped the items back into Mom's purse. Mom peered back at me with a be careful look. The event was hard work. Having to be Kai in front of all these bigwigs took it out of me. So by the time we arrived home, I was ready to sleep for a week. Daddy, I'm so glad you're back. How was your event? A girl suddenly rushed out of nowhere and wrapped her arms around my father. Oh, hi, Mrs. Wilson. And you must be my half-brother, Kai. Hi, she smirked. This was Diamond, my unruly half-sister, Mom and I both muttered back hellos, but Dad seemed oblivious to the tension between us all.
It was rather successful. I believe the Woodward contract will be mine very shortly. Well, seeing as you're here, you must stay for dinner.
After dinner, Mom and I went to the kitchen to bring out the desserts, leaving Dad and Diamond alone. But as we headed back to the dining room, we heard Diamond say, "Please let me be your assistant. I want to learn more about the family company. Besides, I'm far more business-minded than Kai, so I don't see why I can't be the director one day." Hearing this, Mom cleared her voice. Diamond then startled and turned around to see Mom holding up a plate with a smile. "Anyone for fruit?" The next day, Mom asked me to go on a walk with her around the garden. Through gritted teeth, she said, "You heard what that devil Diamond said to your father. She's after your position in the company. We can't let her get away with this." Oh no, what did my mother have planned now? I didn't want to play games, I just wanted to be Liana. She continued, "You'll have to come back home at once and work in the company. As Kai, of course." "No way," I yelled. "I've followed your selfish rules for 20 years. This is my time now. I'm not doing this." I started to walk away, but Mom pulled on my arm. "Darling, I know." She let out a thoughtful sigh. "But if you tell the truth now, then your father might disown us, which will allow Diamond to wriggle her way to what is rightfully yours. We can't let this happen. It's unacceptable." I shook free of Mom's grip and stormed off. This time she didn't try to stop me. I needed time to think this all through. I didn't want to be Kai anymore, but I also didn't want us to lose everything. I really hate doing this, but I guess it's not totally unreasonable of Mom having to pull out these desperate measures. I found my mother in the conservatory, staring thoughtfully out of the window. On seeing me, she smiled. "Oh, Kai, Mom, I'm sorry. I've been childish. I know you only want the best for me." Mom took my hand and replied, "No. I'm the one who's been asking too much of you. I've been thinking, and perhaps there's a way in which you can be both Kai and Liana." I gave her a questioning look, and she continued, "It's bonkers, of course, but it might just work." She chuckled. "Kai should get engaged to Liana." What? My mother wanted me to get engaged to myself? But then thinking about it, my mother was an expert at bringing her crazy ideas into fruition. Besides, what did I have to lose? Well, besides my entire family and inheritance. So the next day, while I was having dinner with my parents and grandparents, I stood up and announced,
"I have something to tell you all. I have a fiancée, Liana. She's smart, beautiful, well-educated, and you're all going to love her. We plan to marry as soon as I finish my master's degree."
Then I passed around my phone with a Liana picture on it. My grandparents seemed thrilled, and my grandpa said,
"Ah, yes, it's about time our beloved grandson found himself a wife."
I held my breath as the picture reached my father, and he peered down at it with scrutinizing eyes. He looked up at me, and for a horrible moment I thought he'd figured out the truth. But then he said,
Good. So, when will we meet this Liana?"
"Soon. She's just finishing her courses. She's coming over next week. But I still had some paperwork going on at school, so Liana will visit you guys first, and I'll fly home later. That's how excited she is to meet you all." I can't wait, dear. She seems like a lovely young lady." My grandma looked genuinely happy. Then I continued, "Yes, Nanny, she is. And in fact," I turned to Dad, "Liana is looking for an internship. It would be nice if she could get a spot in our company, as she'll have to learn about our family's business sooner or later. Right, Dad?" He seemed pleased as he replied,
"Very well. Just bring her over."
So Mom's latest crazy plan seemed to be working. After my announcement, I stayed home for a few more days as Kai. Then I flew back to Canada, packed my things, and flew back as Liana. Phew, this was exhausting. Walking into the house with all eyes on me was terrifying, but everyone rushed over and greeted me. Even Diamond. Mom linked arms with me. "Darling, our house has plenty of guest rooms. You gotta stay here, I insist. We all are family now, aren't we? Please, make yourself at home." Smiling, I replied, "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson, that would be lovely." Suddenly Diamond interrupted. Oh, seeing as this house has that many spare rooms, why can't I have one? Mom looked flustered, then reluctantly replied, Sure, Diamond. I have never said that you couldn't. Just pick one. This was not part of the plan, but fine. I ain't scared of her. Mom then led me to my room and kept reminding me to be extra careful now that Diamond was around 24/7. On one occasion, I was reading by the window in our home library when Diamond waltzed in and yanked the book off me. Oh, I get it. You're only marrying that half-brother of mine for the first edition books, she winked. I took the book back off her, then politely replied, Yes, I'll marry whoever I need to if it means getting this 8th edition book published in 2017. Oh, the glamour. Hilarious. She just sneered and walked away to hide the humiliation. Unfortunately, even at work, I didn't get a break from Diamond. Instead, I was assigned a job under her management. Ugh. One time, I returned from lunch to find the report I was working on had vanished from my desk. I pulled my desk apart looking for it, only for her to pass it to me at the end of the day. Then, with this devious grin on her face, she said, You were meant to have this finished today, weren't you? It looks like you're in for a late one. Ugh! She was definitely more of an imitation than a diamond. And as he'd predicted, my father ended up getting the Woodward contract, and it was a huge deal. Some of the representatives from the company were coming in to discuss the project, so everyone seemed to be buzzing around like flies in preparation. Diamond ordered me to make coffee and take it to our guests. I was walking with the tray of drinks when I bumped straight into someone. Oh no, the coffee soaked his white shirt. As I muttered out a sorry, I realized something. I knew this man. He looked really familiar. It was Kevin, my old school friend. He'd changed so much, but it was definitely him. I'd recognize him anywhere. But he didn't seem to recognize me, which I guess wasn't surprising seeing as I was dressed as a girl. I wonder what he was doing here.
Senin pagi itu seperti biasanya. Aku sedang berdiri di dekat lokerku saat cewek ini, si Leila, menghampiri. Menyandar ke loker di sebelahku dan berbicara padaku dengan suara sengau. Hai ganteng, apa kau ada rencana sepulang sekolah? Aku menoleh ke sekeliling dengan bingung. Hah? Apa dia bicara padaku? Biasanya cewek seperti Leila tak bicara dengan cowok sepertiku. Maksudku, ayolah, lihat dia. Dia itu cewek terseksi di sekolah. Sementara aku, Felix, hanya cowok kutu buku berwajah biasa saja. Dengan canggung aku menjawab, hai, aku cuma mengerjakan PR sepulang sekolah. Dah. Kemudian ku tinggalkan dia di sana tercengang. Tapi itu tidak berhenti di sana. Sepulang sekolah, dia kembali menghampiriku dan bertanya, kau mau jalan denganku? Diikuti dengan kedipan di mata. Tidak, terima kasih. Aku harus menyelesaikan makalahku tentang revolusi Perancis. Lalu aku jalan pergi. Ya ampun, apa dia sungguh mau jalan denganku? Tak mungkin, dia pasti sedang kalah taruhan atau semacamnya. Bahkan keesokan harinya, sekali lagi, dia langsung mengarah kepadaku dengan raut wajahnya yang tegas dan menakutkan saat aku sedang ngobrol dengan teman-temanku. Dan dengan nada serius dia berkata, dengar Felix, apa kau mau jadi pacarku? Apa? Semua teman-temanku mulai bersorak. Aku sangat malu sampai aku mengusir mereka pergi untuk mendapatkan privasi dengan Leila. Aku tersanjung, tapi tidak. Dia merengut padaku. Maaf, kau sadar kalau aku ini Leila Hall, cewek tercantik dan paling populer di seluruh sekolah. Belum lagi anggota pemandu sorak. Para pemandu sorak itu penuh drama. Dengan tenang aku menjawab, maaf, cuma kau ini bukan tipeku. Dia kembali berteriak. Apa? Aku ini tipe semua orang. Aku hanya mengangkat bahu dan pergi. Ya Tuhan, itu canggung sekali. Tapi paling tidak dia sudah paham sekarang. Iya kan? Nah, salah. Karena masalah baru saja dimulai. Awalnya, banjir sampah email dan buletin. Kemudian panggilan telepon aneh dari spa dan salon kuku. Menanyakan jika aku membuat janji untuk hari itu. Saat jelas-jelas aku tak melakukannya. Melebihi itu semua ada akun Facebook palsu yang mulai menyebarkan fotoku yang tak menyenangkan. Mengupil saat di kelas bahasa Perancis. Menjulurkan lidah dengan aneh karena berkonsentrasi saat memeriksa makalahku. Bahkan ada klip gerakan lambat aku mengunyah seperti unta saat aku menikmati burgerku. Ya ampun, aku makan jelek sekali. Sementara sedang kutelusuri foto-foto ini, Leila melompat keluar dengan senyum lebar di wajahnya. Jadi pacarku, maka semua prank itu akan berhenti. Benar, tentu saja itu ulahnya. Dia tak punya kegiatan lain yang lebih baik. Aku menggelengkan kepala dan berkata, tidak, terima kasih. Ini masih lebih baik daripada bersama cewek menyebalkan sepertimu. Kemudian beberapa hari kemudian saat aku jalan ke sekolah, kulihat semua orang memberiku tatapan tak suka. Apa kemejaku terbalik atau apa? Tidak, jadi apa masalahnya? Aku bertanya kepada temanku dan ya ampun, Leila beritahu semua orang kalau aku menciumnya lalu mengghostingnya. Dia ini Harlequin di dunia nyata, seksi tapi benar-benar gila. Hanya orang sinting seperti Joker yang bisa mencintainya. Aku sudah muak dengan kelakuannya. Aku tak bisa biarkan dia membuatku terlihat seperti orang jahat untuk sesuatu yang tidak aku lakukan. Jadi saat makan siang, ku datangi mejanya dan berteriak di hadapannya. Apa kau gila? Kenapa kau tak paham kalau aku tak menyukaimu? Kemudian aku berteriak supaya semua orang bisa mendengarku. Hei dengar, rumor soal aku mencium dan mengghosting Leila itu bohong. Dia mengarangnya karena aku menolak kencan dengannya. Jadi tolong simpan pandangan kotor kalian untuk orang lain. Terima kasih. Leila mendorongku dan lari keluar dari sana. Mungkin aku sedikit kasar, tapi itu ulahmu sendiri, Tuan Putri. Kemudian saat kelas bahasa Perancis dia absen tapi tak seorang pun tahu kemana perginya. Apa mungkin itu karena aku? Enggak, kemungkinan tidak. Tapi saat aku berjalan pulang, kulihat dia duduk sendiri di sebuah ayunan di taman bermain. Pergi saja Felix, cewek ini hanya membawa masalah. Aku berpikir dalam hati tapi ya ampun, dia kelihatannya sangat sedih. Jadi berikutnya yang ku tahu aku jalan mendekat dan duduk di ayunan sebelahnya. Aku tanya, kenapa kau tak ada di kelas bahasa Perancis? Tinggalkan saja aku, berhenti pura-pura kau peduli. Dengar. Aku menghela napas dalam-dalam lalu melanjutkan. Aku minta maaf karena teriak padamu di depan seluruh sekolah. Itu tak keren. Tapi apa yang kau lakukan padaku juga tak keren. Bisakah kita menganggapnya impas? Leila terdiam sebentar, tapi kemudian dia mengangguk dan tersenyum padaku. Nah, itu tak terlalu buruk ya kan? Jadi, sejak itu seterusnya semuanya baik-baik saja di antara kami. Dia bahkan tersenyum padaku di lorong. Kapanpun kulihat Leila, rasa hangat datang padaku dan aku tak bisa berhenti tersenyum. Pernah, aku bahkan habiskan seluruh istirahat makan siangku jalan-jalan mengelilingi sekolah supaya aku bisa melihat sekilas wajahnya. Ya ampun, kurasa aku sudah jatuh hati pada Leila. Tapi kenapa sekarang? Aku berusaha mengabaikan perasaanku, berharap akhirnya rasa itu akan pergi. Tapi kemudian hari Valentine tiba, dan Leila, sebagai cewek populer, menerima banyak sekali mawar sampai bisa buka toko bunga. Menyebalkan sekali. Aku harus berbuat sesuatu. Jadi, sepulang sekolah aku ke rumahnya dengan beberapa coklat dan sebuah boneka beruang. Segera saat dia membuka pintunya, aku berseru. Aku tahu aku ini seorang yang sangat bodoh. Menolakmu adalah kesalahan besar. Apa kau mau jadi Valentine-ku? Aku berdiri di sana berwajah merah dan bersiap menerima penolakan. Tapi dia hanya merampas hadiah itu dari tanganku lalu berkata, "Iya, baiklah kalau begitu." Iya Tuhan, aku tak percaya ini. Aku, cowok kutu buku biasa bagi kalian, memacari cewek paling populer di sekolah. Cinta itu tak bisa diduga sama sekali. Aku terkesan betapa terbukanya dia perihal kutu bukuku. Dia bahkan nonton The Mandalorian denganku, dan jadi gemas kapanpun dia melihat Baby Yoda. Tapi satu hal yang tak berjalan lancar di antara kami. Ya, kalian bisa tebak, yaitu belajar. Leila sepertinya tak peduli dengan nilainya, dan aku tak ingin dia gagal. Jadi kutawarkan diri jadi tutornya. Tapi dia terus saja menguap dan menatap keluar jendela kapanpun kami mulai belajar. Felix, aku punya ide. Kenapa tak kau kerjakan saja PR untukku? Sementara itu, aku bisa berlatih memadu sorak karena kami akan ada kontes penting dan itu berarti sekali untukku. Seperti halnya kuis matematika bagimu. Apa? Dia serius? Ya Tuhan, aku benci berbuat curang seperti ini. Tapi dia memberiku tatapan memelas dan aku yang payah ini menyetujuinya. Terima kasih Felix, kau yang terbaik. Dia menciumku di pipi. Lalu langsung memberiku setumpuk PR. Aku bertanya padanya kenapa ada banyak sekali, dan dia menjelaskan kalau itu karena dia tak paham, jadi dia membiarkannya menumpuk. Tapi tunggu dulu, kenapa ada bahasa Spanyol? Dia ada di kelas bahasa Perancis denganku, bukan Spanyol. Tapi dia hanya mengangkat bahu dan bilang orang tuanya memaksanya belajar itu di luar sekolah. Oh, kasihan sekali labu kecilku ini. Suatu hari seperti biasa, aku mampir ke rumahnya untuk mengambil PR-nya, tapi dia tidak ada di rumah. Itu aneh, hari ini tak ada latihan memadu sorak. Jadi, di mana dia? Aku melihat tumpukan yang dia minta ibunya untuk serahkan kepadaku, dan kulihat beberapa lembar latihan bahasa Spanyol. Jadi aku berkata ke ibunya, "Oh, dia pasti sedang pelajaran bahasa Spanyol ya." Ibunya terlihat sedikit bingung lalu tertawa. "Kau tahu Leila, dia terlalu keras kepala untuk tambah kelas." Hah? Jadi makalah ini bukan miliknya? Kalau begitu, itu punya siapa? Dan kenapa? Tiba-tiba aku merasakan perasaan tak nyaman menggelitik di bawah kulitku. Aku memutuskan untuk menemuinya nanti di sekolah. Keesokan harinya aku sedang berjalan melalui lorong mencari Leila saat tiba-tiba aku dengar beberapa cowok bersorak. Sesuatu soal mendapat nilai A untuk bahasa Spanyol. Tunggu dulu, apa dia bilang bahasa Spanyol? Aku menoleh untuk memeriksa siapa itu. Dan yang mengejutkanku, itu adalah Hector, kapten tim sepak bola. Hector terkenal karena tampan dan sebagainya, tapi juga karena payah dalam pelajaran sekolah. Seseorang pasti sudah mengerjakan PR untuknya. Dan kalian bisa tebak, seorang itu aku. Ini semua masuk akal sekarang. Leila dan Hector pasti sepasang kekasih. Mereka mungkin menarik, tapi mereka berdua payah dalam belajar. Jadi dia memperalatku untuk melakukan PR mereka berdua. Ini semua lebih masuk akal lagi sekarang. Hubungan ini tak ada yang nyata. Ini hanya sandiwara. Dan tak mungkin kubiarkan mereka lolos dari ini. Aku punya rencana sempurna untuk mengungkap mereka. Selama makan siang, aku duduk di meja paling dekat dengan Hector. Lalu aku mulai bermesraan dengan Leila. Aku menyuapinya kentang keju. Kemudian aku membelai rambutnya dan dengan suara keras berkata padanya betapa lembut rambutnya itu. Aku cepat melirik ke Hector, menunggu reaksinya. Tapi tak ada. Dia sepertinya lebih tertarik dengan burgernya daripada dia. Leila mengangkat alisnya padaku. Apa kau baik-baik saja? Kau bertingkah sangat aneh. Aku tertawa keras, kurangkulkan lenganku padanya lalu berkata, sebenarnya lebih ke berteriak. Oh, karena kau ini imut sekali. Tapi kenapa masih tak ada reaksi dari Hector? Dia dan temannya bahkan bersorak. Dan di perjalanan dia keluar kantin, dia bahkan mengacungi jempol padaku. Leila juga tak terlihat terpengaruh sama sekali. Ya ampun, seseorang tolong telepon The Academy. Karena mereka berdua layak mendapat Oscar. Rencanaku gagal total. Ini sangat bikin stres. Aku terdiam dan Leila tahu dan memberiku pandangan bertanya-tanya. Ada yang tak beres, kau bersikap sangat aneh. Oke, jika dia ingin tahu maka baiklah. Jadi aku berseru. Aku tahu kalau makalah bahasa Spanyol itu untuk Hector. Kalian bersama dan kau hanya memperalatku untuk melakukan semua PR kalian. Aku tak bodoh, kau tahu? Terima kasih sudah mengenalmu, tapi tolong jangan pernah lagi bicara padaku. Kemudian aku pergi tanpa membiarkannya mengucap sepatah kata pun. Ya, itulah akhir dari ceritaku. Cukup menyedihkan, iya kan? Aku bohong kalau aku katakan aku tak merasa kecewa soal itu. Aku sungguh menyayanginya. Biarlah, aku akan berkuliah beberapa bulan lagi dan aku akan bertemu cewek imut yang tak akan mengelabuiku untuk melakukan PR cowok lain. Oh, maaf teman-teman, ada yang menelponku. Ya Tuhan, itu Leila. Apa yang dia mau? Kita sudah putus, berhenti menelpon. Apa? Baiklah, janji kau akan biarkan aku sendiri setelah ini. Oke, tunggu, aku akan turun ke bawah. Ya Tuhan, Leila ada di depan pintu rumahku dan dia bersikeras tak mau pergi kecuali aku bicara dengannya. Jangan kemana-mana semuanya. Aku akan ceritakan pada kalian segera setelah aku kembali. Ya Tuhan teman-teman, kalian tak akan percaya apa yang Leila baru ceritakan padaku. Masalahnya adalah, tim pemandu soraknya harus banyak berlatih untuk kontes yang akan datang. Yang artinya mereka tak bisa belajar sesering biasanya. Karena itu, dia harus mencari seseorang yang mau mengerjakan PR mereka agar nilai mereka tak merosot. Dan itulah saat Leila muncul dengan ide untuk memenangkanku sebagai cowoknya. Semua godaan, lelucon itu, semua adalah bagian dari rencananya. Itu kebenarannya. Tapi Leila tak tahu mengenai lembar soal bahasa Spanyol, karena rekan timnya Harper yang memberi itu padanya. Ternyata Hector adalah pacar Harper. Tak menyangka itu ya kan? Tapi aku masih sangat marah pada Leila, karena dia tetap memanfaatkanku. Kemudian Leila mengambil beberapa makalah dan menunjukkannya padaku. Hah? Itu adalah PR dengan nilai B semua. Kemudian dia memberitahuku, oke, kuakui awalnya aku tak menyukaimu. Aku hanya mendekatimu untuk memanfaatkanmu. Tapi kemudian aku benar-benar jatuh hati padamu seiring aku mengenalmu dengan lebih baik, oke? Jadi, aku berhenti memberimu PR-ku dan aku kerjakan sendiri. Jadi, perasaannya terhadapku juga nyata? Aku tak percaya itu. Akhirnya aku memaafkannya dan sekarang kami lebih bahagia dari sebelumnya. Aku harus bilang, saat Leila dulu bicara padaku, kukira dia itu cewek gila seperti Harley Quinn, yang aku tak akan pernah suka. Tapi aku salah, ternyata akulah yang tergila-gila padanya. Jadi, ternyata aku lebih mirip dengan The Joker daripada yang kukira.
Really? You're from Korea? No way. You sound just like a native speaker.
Richard jumped up in surprise as I told him I came from South Korea. Yeah, I'm 100% Korean, I answered him, giggling. I had spent hours every day practicing my English. Guess it has paid off. But that was 6 years ago already. I'm Jenny, by the way, and I'm Korean. At the time, I was 21. I joined an online English speaking club where I first met Richard, who never in a million years did I think I'd fall in love with. But that's exactly what happened. Ever since that very first class, we started talking every day, and the sparks between us were undeniable. He always mentioned how he wished I could be in the Czech Republic with him, and I found myself daydreaming about our future wedding. Okay, so I was getting ahead of myself, but he was just so amazing. After a month of talking nonstop, I realized I was probably going to fail college if I didn't start setting my priorities straight. But all I could think about was him. And whenever we weren't chatting, I was stalking him on social media. And every time I saw him tagged with another girl, I got so jealous. This couldn't be healthy. I mean, I hadn't even met him in real life, but still, we continued to fall for each other. And he even introduced me to his two best friends, Anastasia and Pavel, via video chat. But not as blossoming as my love life, I was failing miserably at college. I'd always been the one who laughed at my lovesick friends, and now I was no better than them. This wasn't right. Something had to change. So even though it was killing me inside to do this, one night before sitting down on my desk to work on my assignment, I just picked up my phone and blocked his WhatsApp, deactivated my Facebook, and all without letting him know. Yep, I full-on ghosted him. It was such a hard decision, because that night, instead of getting anything done for the assignment, I found myself lying in bed with a tear-soaked pillow. It hurt so much, but I had to think about my future. My parents would kill me if I didn't get a good job. I couldn't let them down. Anyway, Pavel messaged me a few days later saying Richard had gone totally crazy and he'd never seen him this upset before. He barely ate anything and would drink all day. He's not much different from a zombie now. But I stayed unfazed. Bet he'd be okay though. He was young and handsome and girls were always after him. He'd get over me soon. And I'd get over him, right? If only it were that easy. I missed him every single day. Even though we'd been thousands of miles apart, he somehow always made me feel so safe, like he was right there next to me. What had I done? I'd ruined everything. Ugh. Instead of wasting time overthinking, it'd be better to put all my energy into my studies for now, right? And it worked. When graduation came around, I was the top student in my class and even got accepted on an exchange program in Australia. Without even thinking, I texted Richard to tell him the good news. I apologized for disappearing on him and said it had messed with my mind because I hadn't expected to fall for him so hard. I had just needed some time to finish my studies, but now I was ready to reconnect again. Well, he'd seen my messages, but there was no reply. It felt like someone had punched me in the heart. Hours later, he finally replied and said,
Sorry, Jenny. I'll get in touch soon. Now isn't the best time.
I couldn't believe the words I was reading. I could actually hear the sound of my heart shattering, but it served me right. I was the one who'd gotten rid of him. He deserved better. But still, I stalked him every day online, and then I realized the only way to solve this would be to fly to the Czech Republic and find him. First, though, I had my exchange program in Australia. I bought a new phone and got a new number for the trip to leave my old one in Korea for my uncle who was always complaining about his outdated phone. Those 3 months in Australia were awesome, and I got my mind off things for a little. I was ready to start fresh when I got back from the trip, until my uncle told me that someone had texted me on my old phone, but because he didn't know English, he didn't know if it was for me or not. I immediately checked it, and there was a message from Richard that said,
Jenny, I'm so sorry for my last message. I miss you so much. Your smile, your eyes, your voice. I hope you can give me another chance. Love, Richard.
OMG! Months had passed since he'd sent it, and the worst part of all is that my uncle had read the message, and so it said seen. This was a disaster. Okay, but I had to focus on the positive. He missed me. Maybe it wasn't too late. I tried to call him, but he didn't answer, so I texted him and explained what had happened. He finally replied and said he thought I'd given up on him. I'd never give up on him. We then had a proper phone call. I am still thinking about you all the time. Why didn't you send me a Facebook message? The words tumbled out of my mouth in a rush, as if I was afraid I would lose contact with him again in any sec. Suddenly, he went all quiet, and then he told me he'd recently met someone, and that he hoped I'd understand and still want to be friends. I felt devastated. Why was it so hard for us? But in the end, there was no other choice for me. I just wished him well and hung up. All I could do now was move on. It was time to find someone else to date. Clearly, Richard and I weren't meant to be. My heart hurt, but I found a job and threw myself into it, giving it all my attention. Eventually, I got promoted, and after 5 years, I was able to help my parents pay off their debt. I even moved up to a management position. Of course, during this time, I dated a bit, but I couldn't make any of the relationships last. I just missed Richard all the time. I kept dreaming of us spending Christmas together. It was so frustrating. I mean, it had been 5 years, and we hadn't spoken at all. Why couldn't I just get over him? I occasionally went on his Facebook page, but all I could see was his profile pic that remained the same for years. I'd unfriended Anastasia and Pavel, too, so I couldn't stalk them either. For all I knew, he could be someone's husband now. Maybe even a dad. And yet, still, I never gave up hope that maybe we'd meet in real life, our paths would cross, and we'd finally get to be together. I couldn't stop thinking about this. And then 3 weeks before Christmas, I got a new following request on Instagram. I couldn't believe it. It was Pavel. And he was now married to Anastasia. This made me so happy. And he told me they were going on their honeymoon to Korea and hoped to see me. OMG, this was so exciting. I desperately wanted to ask him about Richard, but I was terrified to hear that he had kids or something. Anastasia messaged me too and asked how I was doing. I told her I was still single because I worked all the time. Hey, There was no way I could tell her it was because I was still obsessed with Richard. Anyway, the week flew by, and finally I was at the airport awaiting to meet Pavel and Anastasia in real life. They both looked so sweet, and I gave them the biggest hugs. After hugging them, I noticed someone standing behind them. OMG. Was that Richard? What was he doing there? I was so stunned I couldn't move. It was really him. Pavel broke the silence by saying,
"We brought Richard along for you, Jenny. Feel free to hit him, bite him, kick him, or whatever you want to do if you think he deserves it."
Out of complete shock, I just burst into tears. It had been 6 long years of total silence, and now here he was, looking at me. I asked myself, could I hug him? But I didn't even get a chance to answer my thought because he ran towards me and picked me up in his arms, squeezing me tightly. Then he whispered in my ear,
"I'm so sorry, Jenny. Please don't cry. I'm here. I won't leave you. I promise."
Could I trust him, though? I was still in shock as I drove them to their hotel, and then again later when I drove to take them out for some Korean food. I was nervous about hanging out with them all, but we seriously had the best night eating, drinking, and laughing. The next day, Pavel and Anastasia would start their honeymoon. So maybe then Richard and I would have some time alone together to talk about whatever was left between us. After dropping them back at their hotel, I was driving away when suddenly I saw Richard running back towards me. He said he wanted to tell me something, so I pulled over and we sat down on a bench to talk. I listened as he told me that over the past 6 years he tried to date other girls, but it never worked out because I was always in the back of his mind. He said he'd spend most of his time working so he could save up to visit me or buy me a ticket so I could come and visit him. It had taken him longer than he'd hoped because his parents had got divorced and he'd been looking after his mom who was super depressed. A few months later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and so he'd had to work even harder to help her pay for treatment. After 3 long years of fighting, she sadly passed away. And ever since then, he'd been feeling so lonely and sad. One day, he asked Pavel to contact me somehow, and when he found out I was still single, he was over the moon and decided it was finally time to come to Korea and see me. He said seeing me in real life had made him fall even more in love with me, which he hadn't thought was even possible. Then he hugged me tight and I couldn't stop crying. We spent Christmas together, just like I always dreamt of. And well, the rest is history. Here I am now, packing my bags to fly to the Czech Republic to see Richard. I can't wait to meet his family. And you'll never believe it, but we're even planning our wedding. The big question is, where do we live? Should I go there, or should he move to Korea? To be honest, it doesn't matter. As long as we're together, it'll be perfect. So it's true what they say. If something is meant to be, it'll be. Even if it takes a year or 6. All I know is that I'm glad I had the patience because I've never been happy.
This was my first day at my new school, and so far, it was going pretty well. Can you believe the principal himself was giving me the guided tour, as well as showering me with praise?
Amber, with your impressive grades and outstanding academic achievements, you'll fit in nicely here. This is Leo, my son. He's another excellent student here, and he's going to show you around.
Leo looked at me from head to toe, then smiled and winked at me. Huh? Was he checking me out?
And here's the library. Maybe we could study here together sometime.
Sorry, but I prefer to study alone. Right at that moment, a guy walked past us to the librarian's desk. Oh my God! He totally had this whole cool bad boy look going on. I zoomed in to see what book he was holding. The Orion Mystery? Wow, nice taste. I've been really into ancient stuff these days too. Leo must have noticed me staring at that guy as he snidely said,
I'd steer clear of the likes of him if I was you. His grades are pathetic, and he's probably only in here so he can take a nap. He's below your league, while I'm far more suitable.
Thanks for showing me around, but seeing your smug and scornful attitude towards others proves otherwise. Then I left, leaving a stunned-looking Leo behind. I found my class easily enough, even without Leo's help. And my desk, yeah, there was no missing that. I mean, the huge bouquet with my name on it and a welcome hamper full of candy was a dead giveaway. And apparently, it was from the principal. Whoa. I knew he was glad I was here, but wasn't this a bit too much? Anyway, I shared all the flowers and candies with my classmates to get to know them better. So far, so good. And these two sweet girls, Jane and Ellie, walked to the canteen with me and showed me how to get the lunch tray using my student QR code. But then they pointed over to a group of students sitting next to the window and told me to go sit with them. Huh? Why can't I sit with you? You're not one of us. Then they went and joined another group. What did they mean by that? I looked around and noticed there were two menus, a delicious-looking one on the red board and a bland one on a blue board. It seemed the boards correlated to the trays, as more kids than not had the blue trays with the dull foods. I took my red tray full of tasty food and walked over to the window, where all the kids were sitting with red trays, including Leo. There's something really strange about this school. I was pretty awkward and didn't know what to do when I saw the Orion mystery boy walking in with a blue tray. So, without thinking, I approached him. I saw you this morning in the library. You were checking out my favorite book.
So, should I return the book or what?
No, I just want to make friends. Stop hanging out with this loser. A straight A student like you should sit with us. We're different. See? This was so stupid. So I told Leo I didn't need colored trays to tell me who I could and couldn't talk to, and that I was fully capable of making my own mind up. Leo and his friends looked furious, while the Orion mystery boy just grinned. Suddenly, a girl in the group spoke up with a super cold tone. Don't worry, Leo. This new girl will soon figure out what losers they are. Then she signaled for the whole group to leave. After that, the Orion mystery boy and I started talking, and he finally told me his name. It's John. The blue tray kids were really nice. Way nicer than the red tray ones. I asked John what the deal with the trays was, and he said that this school divided its students into two groups. The red were top achievers, and therefore got better food, cleaner spaces at the canteen, just everything. While the blues were made to eat bland food and squashed into the corner of the canteen. Poof! This whole thing was dumb. So I continued hanging out with John and his friends. Only Leo and that girl he was with, Quinn, didn't approve. Turns out she's the best student around here, and that made her the leader of the Reds. On many occasions, Quinn and her minions had pulled me aside after class to tell me I should stay away from the blues. But I didn't care. Then one day, the school announced that it was looking for the next school president. I wasn't that interested in it, but my friends were eager for me to sign up. If you're president, then you could make things fairer around here. Right. Better food, better tables and chairs. Please, we need you. Well, they did have a point. I really wanted them to have better things. And I suppose being school president would look good on my profile. So I signed up. But wow, I didn't think I'd be this popular. My friends completely supported me, made colorful banners, and helped me come up with catchy slogans. And you know what? In the end, I got to the final round. Whoop! Now all I had to do was beat Quinn. But then something awful happened at the school. I arrived to find a bunch of students gathered around something. I squeezed through the crowd and... oh my God. The principal's beloved portrait was covered in red paint. Then across the loudspeakers, two names were called to the principal's office. John's and mine.
Do you two know why I've summoned you here?
John and I shared confused looks.
No, huh? My portrait has been vandalized, and I know that Amber, you were the last one who passed the security guard yesterday. And John, you were caught on CCTV climbing over the back gate. Can you both please explain what you were doing so late at school?
I couldn't find my math book, and I have an important math test coming up. So I came back to try and find it.
And what about you, John? I knew it. An exemplary student such as Amber would never do such a thing. But a troublemaker like you, on the other hand, you're expelled. I didn't do it.
Please reconsider, sir. Please give me some time so I can find the one who's responsible.
Very well. Seeing as it's you, Amber, I shall allow you 1 week to prove this boy's innocence. or his guilt. When we left the office, I asked John why he was sneaking about the school late at night, but he got all defensive. I had a thing, and it's none of your business. If you want to believe it was me, then do. Didn't you see what I just did? I defended you. Can't you just tell me? I had a thing, okay? My thing that you don't need to know. Then he left. I stood there feeling confused when Quinn, Leo, and their group walked towards me. Don't waste your time with him. Sooner or later he's gonna be expelled. Right, Quinn? But Quinn ignored him, then gave me a dagger look. I'm gonna say this one last time. Stay away from him. Then they all left. Why was Leo so sure that John would be expelled? I know they all hated John, especially Quinn. Could it be that they framed him? Well, there's only one way to find out. I needed to keep a close eye on Quinn and see what she was up to. So after school, I followed Quinn all the way to the harbor. It's like she was waiting for someone. What on earth are you doing? My God, I had to press my hands over my mouth so I didn't start screaming. Turns out he noticed that I was following Quinn, so he followed me too in case I do something stupid. Suddenly, Quinn took her phone out to call someone. But then a strange thing happened. John's phone started vibrating. Why is Quinn calling you? John took his phone out and showed me the screen. It's just my mom. And when I turned around to see what Quinn was doing, she'd gone. Ugh, I lost her. I've been following Quinn for a whole week, but it's led to nothing. I was so deep in my thoughts that I accidentally dropped someone's backpack and all their stuff fell out. Ugh, it's Quinn's. Better pick everything up before she comes back. But then I saw something that caught my attention. It was a receipt for red paint. Jackpot. I knew it was her. John was skipping classes today, so I took a detour to his house after school to tell him. Huh? Why was Quinn standing outside his door? There was something seriously fishy going on here, so I followed them. They stopped at an abandoned house nearby, and I eavesdropped on their conversation. I think Amber knows something. Last time, we were lucky she didn't catch us dating at the harbor. But this time, what if she finds out? I've been working so hard for this school president campaign. I knew she'd go back for her math book. It would have been fine if the school didn't have that new camera at the back gate. Tomorrow I will confess to the principal that I did it. You didn't do it yourself anyway. Oh God, I couldn't believe it. Turns out Quinn was meeting John at the harbor, so when she called someone, it was actually him. But being an expert at this secret dating game, he had her number saved as Mom. They were hiding their relationship this whole time. And worse, they tried framing me so Quinn would win the election. Unbelievable! I couldn't stay quiet any longer, so I stepped out in front of them, told them I'd heard everything and that I was going to tell the principal. Then I ran off without letting them say a word. The next day, I was en route to the principal's office when I passed Quinn tearing down her election posters on the wall. Why are you doing that? It's okay. I know I don't deserve to be school president. I thought you wanted to be president more than anything in the world. Why else would you play dirty tricks on me? So, Quinn explained to me that she was running for school president to eliminate the discrimination here, so that she didn't have to hide her relationship with John any longer. Oh, wow. I didn't know. I didn't expect her to have such a meaningful motive behind all this. My plan was just to fight for better things for the Blues team. But man, Quinn had a vision to change this whole school. Impressive. And there's one more thing. Since you're the principal's favorite student, we were afraid that if you become school president, despite your best efforts, things here would only get worse. So there was no other way for us. We had to. I'm sorry. It seems like I misjudged Quinn, and I didn't want John to get expelled, so I said that I'd take the blame for the portrait incident. But it's all my fault. You don't need to do that. No worries.
I'm sure to ace the math test and win a prize for the school, so there's no way he's gonna punish me. So at recess, I was heading to the principal's office, but before I could get there, I found myself being dragged into the janitor's closet. Oh, it was John. He was feeling guilty and didn't want me to take the fall. I was about to reply to him when I heard two familiar voices in the science room next to us. It was Quinn and Leo. Oh my God, we could hear them clearly through the ventilation hole. I can't believe it worked. Amber is such a fool. There's no way she'll be allowed to run for president and victory will be mine.
So, are you really gonna remove the division between the two groups just to freely date your stupid boyfriend in public?
Are you fooled by that too? Of course I won't. No way. That was only to trick Amber and John. What I'm gonna do is make sure all troublemakers are gonna be kicked out of school. What? I got played? Again? Ugh! I turned to John and, oh man, he looked disappointed. Don't worry. I know a way to get back at them. On election day, Quinn gave her speech. And unsurprisingly, she went on about how the red group brings more to the school and therefore deserves their privileges. She really believes she could make a fool out of this Amber, huh? When I stepped out on the stage, her jaw dropped. Yeah, Quinn, I didn't confess to the principal. Giving speeches in front of a crowd wasn't something new to me, so I was super confident. I'm sure you're all aware of how this school operates. We're divided into two groups and get treated very differently. What I see here is discrimination and prejudice, when in reality, this should be a safe place for all students to strive and reach their full potential. So, I'm standing here today to tell you that if you choose me to be your next school president, I will break the barrier. Let's say goodbye to red and blue trays and hello to fairness and equality. After my speech ended, the crowd went wild. Wow! And surprisingly, some of the red group were cheering me too. You're probably wondering why I didn't expose Quinn in front of the whole school, right? As I see it, she'd had a massive reality check, so I think that was enough. I also spotted the principal quietly sneaking off with his head down, in the midst of cheers the whole school gave me. Could you guess who won? Yeah, me of course. John came on stage and handed me flowers in front of a furious-looking Quinn. I walked towards her and whispered, "Let's see how you're gonna get rid of the troublemakers now." She just sneered at me, then stormed off the stage. Later, we heard that Quinn confessed all to the principal. Then she transferred to another school. What about me? Well, after I became school president, I stuck to my promise and began making some serious changes to the unfairness of the school. And John, did we become a couple, you ask? Oh no, we're just close friends.